You have a really special opportunity this year in this unique environment of elections to hear from the next generation, literally the next generation who gets the right to vote. And this year we have with us two young emissaries from Israel that have spent a great deal of time going to our schools and engaging children and teens and adults all on Israel. They've spent a great deal of time teaching about the elections in Israel. And more excitingly, they actually went to New York last week to vote for the very first time. It was such an important action to be civically engaged that their organization, Jaffe, actually brought all the emissaries, I think it's 270 emissaries from throughout the United States and Canada, to various consulates to ensure that they got to cast their votes. So, and of course, they put together a little seminar behind it as well. But it was quite the feat to bring all of these young people together because they acknowledge how important it is to have their voices heard. In addition to Ella and Leah, we have Alexander Milman and Kyle Lehrfeld joining us. Alex is a senior at Eastern, and Kyle is a junior at East. And both of them are engaged politically. Kyle actually used to work for Congressman Kim, and Alex, it's in his family. He's been around family members who are representatives. So they are both engaged, and these are wonderful individuals who are really going to share their thoughts with us, because I think it's enough of all the adults telling each other what the next generation needs. So let's hear directly from them what they think about what's going on with these crazy elections we have in this world, especially because they're only a week apart from each other. So let's first just ask a very basic question. Are you guys excited to actually have this privilege of voting? What does it feel like to actually be at this milestone? Leah, you want to answer that first?
Sure. So we voted last week in New York. It was very different. It was actually scary too because you could do a lot of things and your vote will not be accepted or canceled if you'll do something like that or anything basically. So you have to follow rules. And it was also very different than Israel because we have to write our own notes and we didn't get any printed notes. So it was scary, but it was good.
Cool. Ella, what did you think?
I think it just was weird because I went voting with my parents before, but voting by myself and like my own political opinion, I didn't really know who to vote to, and I was really confused for a second, but it was a good experience.
Very cool. Now, Alex, you have something interesting because you will be turning 18 on November 4th, and literally 4 days later, you get to cast your vote. What do you think?
I started doing research into who's running around here. So I'm just preparing to make sure I cast the right vote.
Great. And Kyle, you still have a little bit ways to go, but are you excited about this, about being able to have your voice heard?
I am. I remember when I was 8, I did the math as to when the first election that I'd be able to vote in was, and hasn't changed, obviously. So the next time I can vote is the 2024, or the first time I can vote is the 2024 presidential election.
Very cool. Great. So the first thing we have coming up is, I'm sorry, it's the 5th election in Israel in the last 18 months, which is a little insane. So Leah and Ella have a little video they want to share with us that will help explain this Israeli process of elections. So if everyone wants to just, because it's quite different than it is here in America. Ella, I don't think we can hear it.
Wait a second.
One moment. All right, well, you get that working. Leah, would you like to explain a little bit while we're waiting for the video, a little bit about what your thoughts are on why this particular government is now collapsing?
So the reason why it collapses is because a lot of the coalition members decided to quit because they didn't like a lot of things that were going on. So they just quit. And in a coalition, if they're not the majority of the people, they cannot be a coalition. So there's a coalition and an opposition. The opposition is as are the people, are the parties that don't see eye to eye with the coalition, and the coalition are the people who lead the country, and the leader of the coalition is the prime minister.
Great. So right now, I think Yair Lapid is the prime minister.
Yes.
And what do you think is going to happen? What's your gut instinct? What's going to happen next week?
So for now, the polls say that Bibi, which is the leader of the Likud party, has the most votes, probably will have most mandates, and he will probably be the person to have most mandates. He was the prime minister for 5 different governments, and a lot of people love him, so he will probably get picked again. But he couldn't form a government last time because a lot of people didn't want to be with him, to form a government with him. So it might happen again.
Okay. And Ella, what do you think? What would you like to see happen? What would be an ideal government for the two of you? After 5 turnovers in a year and a half, what would you guys like to see?
I think I just want to see a government that actually can function, because the government didn't function. She didn't function until now. This is why we went to election again and again and again and again. So if it's just gonna function, and we will know, and they will be able to make new rules and do stuff, and without people just stopping everything and don't letting things happen, I think this is the only thing that's really important to me.
A functioning government. That would be nice, huh? Alex and Kyle, what do you think about our current state of affairs? What is your opinion on where we're at right now? Alex, let's start with you.
Sorry. I think that we're very divided, but we're definitely not as divided as like during under Nixon and during like the silent majority, that era. But like, I think that the main reason why we're divided is because of the media, like pushing all their narratives and like, you know, on both sides, very false objectives, or they have their objectives, but just like false information being shared. So a lot of people aren't getting the same information. So that is one reason why we are divided. In terms of like, I don't know, like where I see us going in the future. I mean, I think our government's a lot more stable than the Israeli government in terms of like, we don't have elections, like we have elections every 4 years. Like that doesn't really change unless, I don't know, unless like something absurd occurs, which it hasn't in American history for a very long time. So yeah, I think that like even as bad as we are now, like at least we don't, you know, have a change as quickly as the Israelis do.
Kyle, what do you think?
I agree with Alex. I believe that polarity is definitely one of the most prominent things that we have in our government right now, which is unfortunate. I think we're seeing a lot less of reaching across the aisle in American politics, which is, I mean, while yes, for people who are who identify strongly with the party, that's ideal for them because compromise may not be something that they want to go about doing. It often results in what I believe we're seeing is like a stalemate and failure to really develop either side.
It's true. So girls, when you see the government turning upside down like this, what is the message that it sends to you about your government and your country? How do you feel about that?
I think just show up how split all the people in Israel are. which is kind of sad to say in one hand. In the other hand, it's good to see that everyone has his own like opinions and people are different, and it's okay that people are different.
Leah?
I agree that it's okay that we're different, but at the same time, we are too divided, and everyone is just, we're not too different, but everyone are just not agreeing with other opinions, and that is not helping us to form a government. So a lot of representatives, a lot of Knesset members who are supposed to represent us are not acting as an adults, are not acting as they should be. And that is very frustrating because they're in charge of our country and they can't even form a government. So how can they just represent us and lead our country if they can't form one single thing and agree on things?
It's true. We're not acting very much like adults these days, are we? So with that being said, what do you guys think about the candidates and the politicians' approach to dealing with the government and the way they present themselves to the public? Who wants to start? Go ahead, Kyle.
I honestly think, I mean, prior to everyone joining, we had a discussion in which Leah said that she sees politicians on the television pretty regularly advertising, which is, I mean, it's something that we all have seen and we all, I think, make fun of at some point in our lives. But it's definitely, the mudslinging commercials are something that, I mean, beyond that, it go beyond trying to win an election. They almost dig into a point where it's not necessary. And I think that is being childish in politics is a great example, because I don't think that in order to win an election, it's necessary to dig into an opponent's personal life or to portray them as a villain, because they're really not. They might just have different opinions than you.
True. Anyone else? I don't know. What's it like in Israel? Do they do just as much mudslinging as we do here?
Much more, but it's not ads, but it's everywhere in social media. It's everywhere in the newspapers. People are just saying whatever they want, and again, they're supposed to be adults. They're supposed to be representatives, and they're not doing their job. They're acting like little kids, and it's not very helpful to have their own fights when they're supposed to just do their job.
That's true. So, as parents, we're always role modeling is really the best way that you can teach your children how to behave. So with the role models in the world that you have now in government, do you see that behavior trickling down into your generation? Do you see that the negative behavior is something that the next generation is mimicking, or something that they're fighting against, and they can recognize themselves that this is not the appropriate behavior? Alex, what do you think?
I think that, like, I don't know, the only way that we can really like, those that are experienced in politics, like they like, how do I word this? So first off, I believe we need term limits, because those have been like in politics for too long. They just tend to just not be political anymore. They just tend to be like power hungry. Those that are like, I would say towards millennial, like I would say like for age 40s, they try and play like a childish game in politics. Like those are the ones that are mainly mudslinging now. In terms of us, all we have to do is just be more mature and just have more mature conversations, because what we see on TV is how we talk to other people, right? So like, if I see, like I'm watching like the Pennsylvania race, and all I see is them like just trashing on each other, like absolutely just, like being childish. And then I go to school and like all I hear is just jokes about it, but like not actual conversations. It's better to have actual conversations and grow up like that than just trashing each other cartoonishly.
Agreed. And Ella, do you see that this behavior in the Israeli government, do you see it trickling down into the next generation in the way that problems are solved?
I feel like it's more let our generation to not trust them because we know it's wrong, like they know it's wrong. And the fact that they doing it in front of like everyone, it's I feel it's childish. It's so childish. And then we see it like childish. And then we see how can we trust them to be our government if this is what they're doing to each other instead of like because they will go together in government. No one can go by himself. It's not like in America there's two parties. The parties need to combine to go together. So if they're talking shit about each other, how they can go together after?
Right. Leah or Kyle, you have anything to add to that?
I think that what's unfortunate about American politics and what I would assume is Israeli politics as well, although I'm not very knowledgeable in that area. I mean that when we have a Republican versus a Democrat candidate, and one of them wins, although they may have 51% of the public and they're supposed to represent the general welfare of the public, that 49% that was representing another candidate isn't represented in government until the next election, if not longer, which is unfortunate in our political system.
Leah, you want the last word on this?
I just think that in Israel, a lot of kids our age or a bit older still don't have their own political opinion. And so what they only see is what they family believe in or what they see on the news. So they think we're in this reality where governments don't function. So we only see that. We don't understand that governments were once working because people could be tolerated. And a lot of young people are not encouraged to go and find their own voice. And so that's what they see, that's what they think is true.
So let's switch to what are your biggest concerns? So from the Israeli perspective, what are the issues that most concern you as a young adult heading into the world? You know, next year you'll go back and be able to join the IDF, and then you'll have a whole series of issues in front of you. What are your biggest concerns?
So they always say that Israelis are always looking at security as their main issue when they are choosing a political leader or government. My only concern for now is a government who can function, because if not, we will still be vulnerable and nobody actually talks about the finance. So financially, elections cost a lot of money, and to do 5 elections in 3.5 years is a lot. So everyone are just not focused right now on important things like education, health, security. So I just want actual people who can be mature enough to handle those things.
True. Ella, what about you? What's on your mind?
So me personally, usually politics, it's not on my mind at all. Like, you know, I'm 18. We just graduated high school. A lot of stuff was in my mind. Political issues wasn't in my mind till I like needed to vote. And then I think the biggest thing that concerns me is that we will never have like a functioning government, because even if they try to go together, and they did, and it functioned for like, it didn't really function, but it worked for like 18 months, but that's it, 18 months.
That's right. So actually, a government that actually works in Israel is really what you guys are thinking. You don't sound like you have a lot of faith in the current system. I do have to say, I think 39 parties is a little too much. I think you should try to condense that maybe down to 12. 12 tribes, 12 parties. That's about maximum that the Jewish people should be allowed to have. Kyle and Alex, what are you guys thinking about now? What's the biggest concerns for you?
Gas prices, because I start paying for that soon, and it went up 14 cents today, and I'm scared. So besides that, though, I would say national unity. I would say information, because like I don't know if the information I'm getting is factual. So my opinions could be completely not based on facts, which is something that like I find very concerning. So, but like I don't have that kind of time. I really don't like, go and research every single piece of information out there. And as well, just like I would say also a capable government, because like right now, like it's just not definitely not as not stable as the Israeli government, but not as stable as I would prefer it.
Kyle?
My biggest policy concern at the moment is absolutely in regards to gun control or lack thereof, especially as of January of 2023, there will be 25 states of 50 that do not require permits or background checks of any kind for anyone to carry any sort of firearm, which is absolutely. I mean, I understand that in certain states that it's just not a big issue, but if that were to happen in a state like Pennsylvania or New Jersey, I'd be significantly more concerned, and it's trending in that direction. Especially this past week, I read an article from the New York Times about a 9-year-old girl in Texas who was caught in the crossfire of 2 guns in a Texas bar, which is absolutely something that I could not stop thinking about. I read about it on last Tuesday, and I'm still talking about it. So it's one of those things that you can't really get out of your head.
Yeah, don't blame me on that one. That's rough. Sounds like the Wild West, which I think we have moved past, or one would think we had moved past. And so I had a question here. So when you think about candidates, how do you think about an American candidate supporting Israel? Does that weigh into your factors when you're considering? Well, you haven't considered anybody yet, you just started voting, but when you're paying attention to things that are going on, are you looking at to see how the American candidates are supporting Israel? Either one of you boys. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Like from both Republican and Democratic sides, like I see what Ron DeSantis is doing, and I see like what was her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Tlaib? What's her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No. I'm talking about I'm saying the Democrat candidate who's like, there's one that's like really, really peaceful, and that's really like she's really like I would say she's more center than like left, but she's like left center. Forget her name, but like she also like she supports Israel. I really do support. I also look at like the Squad, for example. Like I don't know if you know about them, but like they're very like anti-Israel. Yeah, they're very anti-Israel. So like that's just also very concerning. It's on both sides, so it is a big concern.
Yeah, but that actually, if I can jump in there, the Squad, and it's not just the Squad. There's we come to this intersectionality that lumps if you're for this cause or that cause or the other cause, you have to also be anti-Israel. It's part of this, for want of a better term, this woke ideology that requires, and you find it not only politically, you find it on the far left in Democratic Party, both in the House and also in the to a lesser extent in the Senate, especially Bernie Sanders, for example. But and you have the far right in the particularly Marjorie Taylor Greene and a couple other members of the House, and that is scary. It can metastasize to down, and there isn't any logic to it. For example, a year ago in Chicago, there was a Dykes March, and Jewish groups were banned. Or banned from it, and that becomes even more. That's the total height of absurdity, because we figured. Do you have an idea what is the life expectancy of an openly gay person in any of the Palestinian territories?
Not long.
Not long, very, it could be measured in minutes. The family would be obligated to do what's called an honor killing. That's just that's the reality of life there. But the fact is, that doesn't hurt gay groups in the States from identifying with Palestinians.
Right.
So Palestinians are having a good laugh on that, but
Carrie, but you bring up a good point about extremism. Do you see your peers being attracted or leaning towards extremism, or do you find that your generation is a little turned off by it and would really like to find a center road?
My generation.
Not yours, the kids. Not your generation. I know about yours, Carrie. I want to hear about the kids.
I think our generation is incredibly, I mean, in Cherry Hill, let me rephrase, that I'm fortunate enough to live in Cherry Hill. I know Alex lives in Voorhees, so same area. We're fortunate enough to live in an area that is generally very accepting, but I mean, to that end, we tend to be very, or my friend group and the people that I surround myself with tend to be very hateful towards extremism on the Republican side, and those are who tend to be more conservative, and people who tend to be more liberal. There are very far extremists that's not exactly something that's seen as negative in our area. It's more of like a normality, which I mean, arguably is, I mean, like some people would consider that to be a great thing, but for the people who genuinely are Republican and who are willing to reach across the aisle, unfortunately their voice is not very much listened to around here.
Right.
That's interesting. And Ella and Leah, are you seeing a growth of extremism in Israel?
Yes, most definitely. I believe extremism is more towards the conflict. So a lot of people on the Jewish side, let's say, are very hateful towards the Arab side, which there aren't any sides to it. So what they see on the media and what they see with the representatives are a lot of hate towards minority groups in Israel or people that are just different. So if they see their leaders being hateful towards people, so they think it's okay to also be very hateful towards minority groups. So yes, I think a lot of people are not tolerant enough, but I would like to think there are some people who are not extremists and they do believe in just not hating people that are different than themselves.
Well, I don't think that.
I'm sorry, Carrie, 1 second. I think Bob, did you have a question or wanted to make a comment?
Sure, if I can. First of all, in the 20 minutes we've been listening to the four young panel, very impressed. I wish I followed politics at their age the way they do. I follow it now 24/7. And my question for the four of them, maybe more for the Americans before the Israelis, because the Israelis are going to go into the service soon, which I applaud them. But Alex and Kyle, you'll be entering college in the next year or two. Kyle, you sort of mentioned just your peer group in the Cherry Hill Voorhees area. As we all know, whatever college you go to, we know the slant there. We know the inhibition on bringing free speech on campuses. In other words, you could bring one side in, you can't bring the other side in. Let's talk about the reality. So my questions to you, obviously, I think being on this panel, you'll be aligned with the Hillels and the other Jewish organizations on whatever college campus you go to, but talk about maybe your aspirations or even more your fears over the next few years as you leave the home and are inundated by what I would consider one side of the political spectrum, and how are you willing to fight? And I know Sabrina and her organization do a lot, but will you feel that you and your colleagues may get indoctrinated with some bad ideas? So Kyle, Alex, your thoughts?
I mean, I think that as is pretty obvious in this area that we live in, a pretty blue area, right? But I mean, definitely some of the colleges that I was looking at are not in areas that are so heavily blue. Some of them are, you know, purple or far red to that extent. And I think it's definitely something that runs through my mind is, you know, am I going to have a positive experience the way that I do in Cherry Hill? But it's definitely something that I don't know if it'll be indoctrinated. I think when it comes to political participation, it's kind of you can keep your head down and you can vote Democratic or you can vote Republican, and it doesn't have to necessarily be something that becomes a part of your everyday life, as it is in Cherry Hill. I think it is, but if you live in an area where you don't align with the majority opinion, it's okay to keep your head down and reflect that in a voting booth and not publicly announce who you voted for.
So I'm early decisioning to Rutgers, and one of the main reasons is because of its Jewish community there. Like Billy, recently they've been hit with like anti-Semitic attacks. Like one of their Jewish fraternities was hit like during Rosh Hashanah, right? Yeah, I believe so. Yep. And I don't think that I really don't care. As if someone wants to have a discussion at any time like on college campus, then I will gladly have it. If it turns violent, then that's completely on them. I would never turn to that. So yeah, basically just I'm always down to have a discussion with someone in terms of not even just Israeli politics or being Jewish, just any topic.
So you guys have mentioned a lot of incredible thoughts, but the one that really resonates with me is that you guys need a functioning government. Do you have hope that things will turn around, or that between now and when you guys are ready to step up as the next leaders, the next representatives, the next senators, who knows, maybe we're looking at the next president on the screen here, or prime minister, who knows? Do you guys have hope? Do your peers have hope?
Well, Sabrina, if I can weigh in here briefly, you have to understand that the difference that we have a presidential system. Israel has a parliamentary system. Now the fact that there's frequent elections, one advantage of the parliamentary system is that it really avoids the type of gridlock that we have. Because we can have a situation like we're running into in 2 weeks, where we have a Democratic president and we're in danger of losing the House and or the Senate to a Republican majority, and that leads to the gridlock situation. In Israel, as a parliament, the prime minister can only be prime minister if he has a working majority in the parliament, in this case, the Knesset. So the legislation usually, not always, but the legislation's the critical legislation at least does get through.
I think some of the legislation gets through. If you can't agree on it, then it doesn't go through, right, Leah? Is that what you're explaining to me, Ella? That you can't, that they haven't been able to pass a lot of things because the Knesset doesn't agree. The parliament doesn't agree. People leave the party. They can't sign anything.
Yeah, well, he had once you lose the working majority, you have to go to new elections.
Right, but that doesn't reflect from the question. That doesn't reflect from the question. Both countries, regardless of how they're run.
Yeah.
Is there a sense of hope that for the future of your countries, Israel or America, is there a sense of hope amongst the young people? Do you feel that your voice makes a difference? Go ahead, Leah.
I would like to think so, but I don't know. So to answer Carrie, so the system works. It had worked before many years ago. Not many years ago, many years. But the problem is for now is that people can't be together. People can handle different opinions. Our leaders can handle that, and that is why it's not working. That is why it has not worked for the past 5 elections, past 5 governments. And so that's the only problem. I would like to believe there's hope. I'm not sure. I don't think it will happen. People are talking about another elections in April. So it could still be falling apart, or we just have to, they have to find a solution or a way to work things out for our government to actually form.
And Ella, what do you think?
I don't really know, actually.
It's fine. I don't think any of us know. It's a roulette game, basically. And Kyle and Alex, what do you guys think? Do you guys have hope for things turning around? Are your peers talking about a hopeful future, or even standing up and being advocates?
I mean, I believe so. I think it's hard to it's hard to go about everyday life and say, no, I don't have hope, because that makes it difficult to, want to participate politically, or even be a part of the government, or then it gets into a broader issue. But I definitely think that there is hope. I think that there's a lot of there just needs to be an increased amount of reaching across the aisle. And I do think that with our generation coming to the point where not only will we be voters, but in about 10 years, we might be the people running for political office, seeing this previous generation that is a little bit more polarized than we would like to be, and kind of recognizing these issues of, we do need to listen to each other. I think once we start to be able to be the people involved in politics, we can be the one to solve that issue.
Great.
Well, I think it's one.
Alex, I'm sorry, Carrie, let me just let Alex give his voice here.
I just think that either we're gonna we need to wake up and start to start listening to each other, or we're just gonna break apart. Because you talk to someone who's older, and they'd be like, yeah, I could just walk up and talk to people throughout the 90s and 80s, and it wouldn't be aggressive. It wouldn't be, they would have actual discussions, and now it's just something that's very hard to do. So if we get past that stage, then we'll be a lot better.
Great. Are there any other questions from any? Carrie, do you have another question or comment?
Yeah, well, you see, I say as a double-edged sword, that younger people today have one tool that we didn't have, which is, of course, social media. And the one thing is, people tend to get stuck in their rabbit hole that for example, if you're on the right, your sources of quote information would be Fox News and Newsmax and OAN, or worse even. There's and that reinforces a certain viewpoint, shutting off the other one. On the left, it could be maybe not as extreme, but if you get all your information from CNN, for example, then also you don't get any alternative, and people don't read newspapers anymore. So so they don't get the analysis. See, I remember having to wake up in the morning, and when I got the morning paper, I could find out what was happening in the world. And that also gave time for the, by the time it reaches the newspapers, their editors and his analysis. But nowadays, by the time it reaches the newspaper, it's not news anymore, it's ancient history. So,
Right.
So
is your question about how they feel that they would, about social media regarding, how do you guys think that social media will either be able to shape your future, or especially on the political scene, how do you think that it's going to impact the way your peers and your generation are going to move forward with issues, especially when it comes to Carrie's point, critical thinking? If you're only getting the news and information in small snippets or in an Instagram picture, and you're not really getting the real story, how are you learning to really analyze and understand the issues that are really out there? Or to your point, even have deeper conversations?
Social media definitely is something that is scary for me in terms of politics, just because I mean, I recognize the fact that I lean a little bit more democratic in terms of policies, and as a result, like my phone is creepy that it knows that, because I've never once seen on Instagram a post about, make America great again or anything supporting Trump, because Instagram knows what I do and don't support, and it does and doesn't put stuff out there for me. So I think that it's getting to a point where when you go on your phone and when you go on Facebook and when you go on Instagram, you see that it appears as though everyone in the world agrees with you. And then when you go out to vote, it's not true, because everyone thinks that everyone else agrees with them. And then you go out to vote and you say, why is the country not reflecting what it's reflected on social media? So I think it's definitely like a shock for a lot of people, because they just kind of see what they want to see. And then when they get out in the real world, it's like blinding.
Yeah, and it reinforces it. I recommend doing a little experiment. Google a simple question: is the world flat? And you'll get first of all a link to the Flat Earth Society. Yes, there is such a thing. You get all sorts of discussions and postings and everything else. And the more you click, you go deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole, and you really become, and it really convinces you that in spite of everything, the world is flat. But that's an extreme example. But it's the same thing. People, as I mentioned, I'm not on Instagram, but I understand that that's how they work, because they want to attract you and keep you on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So they'll play to what you want to hear, not what you need to hear.
Correct. And Leanne, Ella, are you finding that the social media is controlling the conversation about the conflict in Israel?
I feel the social media it is like the fact that people don't really know about the conflict. Even Israelis, a lot of people don't know about the conflict. The only thing they know is what they see on social media. And it always shows only one side, and it always shows only specific thing, and only like the bad thing or only the good things. It will never show both sides. It will never show the whole story. And I feel like this is what people see and they think it's true. And it's hard for Israel, and it makes it hard for the Palestinians too. It makes it hard for everyone.
It does. So do you think that maybe in the future, this will become an issue of privacy, and maybe social media, your generation might change the way social media works?
I don't think so. I think like our generation, most people, they like it. They like that it's coming like in small piece, because they don't really care about those stuff. So when they see it like it's short, they will read about it in the past, and that's it. And that's for them the truth, which is wrong. And most of them even know it's wrong, but they don't care enough to actually research.
They don't care enough.
Yeah.
They don't care enough.
Yeah.
So when do you think your peers start caring? Or when do you think that people start caring more? 18 is very young. You guys you really just came out of, well, two of you are still in high school, so you're just still having a lot of fun. I can tell you that Leah and Ella did not know how hard they were going to work. They'd like to be back in high school. We're working them very hard. They have no idea what's around the corner. So when do you think that some of these issues, I know that these issues are thrown at you right now, but when do you think like that the impact will hit you a little bit more? Probably when you start working. When you get the first paycheck you have and the taxes are taken out, then you'll have a whole new conversation with us. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. For our guests, thank you so much. This is a small and intimate conversation, and I appreciate you sitting with our delightful young adults. You guys are amazing, and I'm really, just as Bob had mentioned, incredibly impressed by your scope of knowledge and the way you've presented yourselves tonight. I wish that everyone in your generation was just like you guys. And we have complete faith in you that you will make things better for us. It's just the way it's going to be. And I know that will happen. Do any of you want to share any final thoughts with us about how you feel about the future or the process? You don't have to. I just thought give you one more chance to say something.
I think conversations like these are what kind of comes to the rescue. So that's good.
Great. Well, thank you
Sure.
everyone for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. And we will continue to have these conversations. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening and don't forget to go out and vote.
Good night.